throw a flashbang or something out there in the lobby and let them know that we're going to start back up again here pretty soon. You being here before the break is on you, but you knew what you were getting into. If you came back, you're a repeat offender. You know who David Jeremiah is? He's a preacher on TV. He has a big church out in San Diego called Shadow Mountain, and he's not only got a big church, he's got 5 private schools in that area as well. Got one on the campus with his church, but he's got 4 other private schools. Embarrassed to say, I did not know him. I did not know his name. I did not know what he did, but my girlfriend did. Dated a beautiful lady named Miss Kim. She read all his books, thought he was the greatest thing in the world. And 3 years ago, his staff called me to go out and work with them for their church, but also their school campuses as well. And I knew she loved him. And I remember telling her, never in your wildest dreams you think I would get asked to go out and help at Shadow Mountain. And she just smiled and said, Ed, you've never been in any of my wildest dreams. So that's the kind of support that I get. All right, so hopefully you agree with me now. It's pretty bad. The problem's bad. We're not doing the right thing. So, okay, what are we going to do? We have to plan as an organization, which in this case would be a church, but schools, businesses. You have to have an organizational plan. Then you also have each individual has to have their plan within the organization. But you also have to have your own individual plan away from the organization. You may be a member or a staff member of this church, but you may not be here. You may be at Walmart on Saturday morning when it kicks off. You may be at the grocery store on Tuesday evening when it kicks off. So you have to have an individual plan regardless of where you are. And what I tell organizations like churches, schools, businesses, 95% of your plan at the organizational level is individuals executing their options. It's not a top-down, do what we tell you. It's you got 3 choices, figure them out before the attack, and when the attack comes, choose wisely. How many of you have seen the movie Argo? I haven't, but someone told me I ought to get this clip, so I did.
There are only bad options. It's about finding the best one.
You don't have a better bad idea than this?
This is the best bad idea we have, sir. By far.
Everything about the active shooter are bad options. And that's what leaders have a problem with that. They want to choose between 2 good options and choose the best one. This is choosing between all options that are really bad and choosing the one that's less bad. And that's tough for some people to deal with. Any possible plan a church or any organization could type themselves or copy off another church or download off the internet, punch 3 holes and put it in their safety book. Any plan, no matter what's in it, will work perfectly every day the shooter doesn't show up. And that's what a lot of organizations' plans are for. They are to pass the state inspection, to have something in tab D of the book. The plan is not to get a low victim count. We have to start making plans for the day the shooter shows up. And we know on that day what's going to show up is extremely ugly, violent, and deadly. So if we want to have a plan that actually has a positive effect on what's going to show up, it has to be ugly, violent, and deadly. We can't have a butterfly and unicorn plan that'll have any kind of positive effect on what's going to show up. That's what's coming. Not that. If you lock your door, the guy on the right, he might walk up and rattle the doorknob and go, oh, they locked it, and go back home. If you say, we love you, put the gun down, he might go, oh, okay, I'll put the gun down. But not the guy on the left. He will shoot through your glass. He'll shoot you even more if you try to talk him out of it. We have to stop hiding under pews or tables or chairs and just waiting to see if we're the next one he shoots. In the military, in the Army, we called it in-state planning. That's an Army term, but it's not an Army concept. A civilian wording would be outcome-based planning. Why are we making this plan? We're making this plan so that if we execute it correctly, it gets us an outcome. Every operations order in the Army, written by every commander at every level, had to include a paragraph called the end state, meaning what's the whole purpose of this operation? What is it going to look like when it's done? High school football coach all week long is formulating his plan for Friday night, always with the ultimate end state. When the 4th quarter buzzer goes off, the number on my side of the scoreboard is higher than the number on the other side of the scoreboard. That's all it is. And before we make a plan, we have a goal of where we want the plan to take us. Most of us remember Alice in Wonderland, little girl walking on a path, and she comes to a point where that path splits, forks, goes in two directions. And there just happens to be a cat there. And she asks the cat, which path should I now take? Which direction should I go? And the cat says, well, where is it you're trying to get to? And she said, well, I really don't know where I'm going. And he said, well, then either path will work, won't it? If you don't know where you're trying to go, every road will take you there. And that's a problem with a lot of organizational planning. They just make a plan to make a plan with no goal in mind other than they can't not have a plan. So we have to start with one of those very uncomfortable questions in the beginning. What's the maximum number of people you're willing to accept shot? Not what do you want, what do you pray for? What's the goal? When the last shot, when this attack is over, after he shows up, how many shot people are there? Almost no organization does that, but that's what we have to do if we really want to make a plan that has some teeth in it. And of course, nobody wants to do it. No one has done it. Here's what I offer them. It's not my church. It's not my school. It's not my business. But if it were me, I would have a goal of single-digit victims, 0 to 9. Well, why not 0? I can't give you a plan that has any hope of 0. I can give you a plan that's got a really high expectation of 0 to 9. And if he comes here wanting 50 and he only gets 4, I'm going to call that a win. So that's what we have to start with. Before we plan, we have to decide what we want the plan to get us. We don't start building a house before we look at the blueprint. We just don't start nailing boards together where we want to nail boards together. We first start with what we want the plan to get us. Then, as we build the plan, it's always focused on that outcome. Here's that tool, the most powerful tool I can give any leader that's serious. So if I'm the leader of a church, and I'm on record, I don't want anybody getting shot. But as a leader, I must make a plan. So if the goal of my plan is no more than 25 people are shot, if he comes here, then logic and math dictates, given the shooting rate of the average active shooter, our plan has to end the attack no later than the end of the 3rd minute, if 25 is my goal. Instead, if I choose 20 as my goal, no more than 20 shot, then math and logic says then we must stop him no later than the end of the 2nd minute, given the average shoot rate of an active shooter. But if they have a goal of single-digit victims, math and logic dictate we must stop him within the first 30 seconds, given the average shoot rate of the average attacker. Organizations like churches basically have 3 major options to base their plan on. Option 1 is call 911, wait on the professionals. I mean, hunker down, do some evasive measures, but we're not stopping it. We're just going to try to survive until the professionals come and stop it. Option 2 could be called option 1A because it's just a slight deviation from 1. That is, we're going to have cops on the property somewhere, but we're still going to call 911 and let either the cops we already have here or the responding cops stop the attack. Option 3 is we are going to counterattack like rabid wasp. And we will have this thing stopped. We will already be prepping, treating, and evacuating casualties before the first ambulance or cop gets on our property. That's option 3. And it does not matter which one of those options an organization chooses, they all work equally well and will give you the same great result on any given day, except one day. There is only one day it makes a difference which one you choose, and that's the day he shows up to shoot you. On that day, they have drastically different outcomes. There is a sample of call 911 and wait. If these numbers are unacceptable to me, why would I then choose a plan that has historically given me that number? If I'm a major league pitcher and every time I've faced this batter and threw him a high slider, he's put it in the second deck of the left field wall, why would I throw him a high slider again? Well, maybe this time it'll work. No, I mean, it's got a bad track record. Let's do something different. When I go and talk to people, they'll say, yeah, Ed, you're not from around here, so you don't understand. We've talked to the sheriff or the chief of police, and they've assured us they can get their cops here really quick. I don't care. That's really quick after they get the radio call, which means really quick after you've got 20 people shot. So all those really quick responding cops are going to do is try to keep it to 25 or keep it to 30. That's not the end of the spectrum I want to deal with. I don't care how fast the cops can get here. after the radio call. I want it over before anybody makes the 911 call, much less a radio call to the cops. These are some pretty impressive police response times, but I don't grade a plan based off that. I grade a plan based off of this. And those are failures in my book. Having cops on site. Having cops on site has value. And there is some deterrence in that. I can show you examples where shooters chose their second or third option because their first or second option had, or they thought they had, armed security. But having cops on the property is not 100% deterrence. All those white attacks are all schools. And all the attackers of each of those schools were students of that school. All those schools had cops on the property, school resource officers. The attacker was a student of the school, knew the cop was there, and still attacked. Schools think if we have a cop, I've had them tell me this, well, you can come talk to us, but we don't have to worry about the active shooter because we got an SRO. Let me show you a list. If it's a middle or a high school, the shooter is one of your own students. They know who the SRO is. They're just going to attack in a different part of the campus or a different part of the building where the SRO can't hear it. And then there's also businesses. There's not just schools where, I'm not saying don't have a cop at a school, at a church. I'm saying don't have a cop and say there we're safe. I always recommend option 3, not because of political beliefs or personal likes or my emotions. It's because, as I told you in the beginning, I'm always going to choose the fight plan that gives us the fewest victims in the least amount of time. Fighting back quickly gives us the best chance of a low victim count. Fighting back without a gun often has worked. Fighting back with a gun almost always works. What we fight him with is negotiable. It's debatable. The fact we have to fight him is not, if we want a low victim count. If we go the armed route, when 3 things are together simultaneously, right now we're at an 88% chance of a single-digit victim count. If there is a good person with a gun close enough to hear or see the first shot of the attack, that's my definition of present, not somewhere on the property, but that person's close enough to see or hear the first shot, which means we don't need a 911 call and a radio call now. And they are willing to risk themselves and aggressively attack. Right now we're at an 88% success rate. If you have a good person with a gun who's close enough to hear it start and acts. An armed citizen has not yet shot the wrong person while shooting an active shooter. Not saying it can't happen, it could happen tomorrow. But so far, there's a pretty good list of armed citizens who have shot active shooters. They've never shot the wrong person. Cops have done it multiple times. Cops have shot each other by mistake 3 times while responding to an active shooter. 2 of those times killing each other. When I recommend that the people present fight back, the victims fight back, instead of hunkering down and trying to survive, I get resistance. It's never logical resistance. It's never mathematical resistance. It's emotional, political. They'll say things like, you telling me somebody with no police training, you expect somebody with no police training to fight an active shooter? Well, I'm not saying it could happen. I'm saying it has. So again, it's not a theory that I think could work. I'm a historian. I'm not a theoretician. It has worked. Just updated this slide because of 2 fairly recent shootings. That's 22 times when there was a good person with a gun. Doesn't matter if he has a badge or not. The badge is irrelevant. Good person with a gun, close enough to hear or see the first shot, acted aggressively. We have 0 to 9 victims. That's 22. 3 asterisks is the off-duty cops not working for their agency but being paid by the church. I showed you the body cam video. That was the last church body cam thing I showed you. Okay. If you see 1 blue asterisk, that's an on-duty uniform cop. You don't see a lot of those because active shooters are a subset of violent criminals. Violent criminals tend to go out of their way not to start their violence right in front of a cop if they can help it. 2 blue asterisks is a completely off-duty cop, not working security, just shopping at the mall, coming out of a grocery store, completely off-duty. That's an armed guard at the poultry plant in Mississippi, white and blue, Tyler, Texas courthouse, both an armed citizen and cop shot that guy. This is Texas. Everybody wanted to shoot that guy. Literally, if I showed you the video, the cops are like, you've had enough. Let me get in on this. They're like fighting. So some videos, cops are hiding, and then that Tyler, Texas courthouse, cops are pushing each other out of the way to try to get a shot at this guy. So if you add the armed citizen to the completely off-duty cops, That's 15 of those 22 that the armed citizen, or the active shooter had no way of knowing there was a person there that could counter him because they were in civilian clothes. Now that's 22 of 25. Where are you hiding them other 3? Allen Premium Outlets, big outdoor shopping center in Allen, Texas. There just happened to be a cop there for a totally unrelated thing. The active shooter started shooting outside in the parking lot with a rifle, so that sound traveled far enough for the cop to hear it, but the cop was so far away in that parking complex, by the time he aggressively got down there and killed the guy, it was over 3 minutes, so of course he got a high number. Dayton, one of the 3 most aggressive active shooters, he shot a new person every 1.2 seconds. So even though that only lasted 30 seconds, and even though there were cops right just not too far around the corner of a building, and they acted more aggressively than you could ever hope cops would act, and they ran around the building and found him and shot him in 30 seconds, he still got over 20 people. Just a really aggressive shooter in a hugely packed, crowded place. Buffalo grocery store, New York. In his manifesto, the active shooter had been in that grocery store several times reconning it. They paid a retired police officer to be there in security guard uniform with a gun. He said, I got to take him out first. He didn't say, this grocery store's got an armed guard, I'm going to go to a different grocery store. He just really wanted that grocery store. So he said, I got to take the armed guard out first. So having good people there is not a guarantee, but I don't know anything that comes close success rate to it. Or is the active shooter dangerous? Yeah, that is a dumb question. Yeah, they are. But they're not that tough. They're not that hard to fight. In fact, they're fairly easy to fight if you have a gun. They're not that difficult. They're not horribly hard to fight if you don't have a gun. Because so far, most of them have been a punk that brought dad's gun to the church, to the mall, to the school, whatever. So yeah, they got a gun. They're evil. They'll shoot. But they're not that skilled. Now, if you just hide up under the pews and tables, then a really low-skilled person can figure that out. So when I go to places I know because of law or policy are going to be unarmed, then I go heavy. And there's all successful. I told you about the Taiwan church, right? But they're over here too because the doctor got shot down unsuccessfully before the pastor was successful. These are all people who are unarmed that went up against an armed active shooter and stopped him because they're not that tough of opponents if you're willing to do it. The bottom ones there are schools. 2 staff members, teachers did it. 2 students did it. We've had just as many students stopped active shooters as we have staff stopped. The 5th one is a construction worker who drove over him with his truck, believe it or not, on the playground. But there is a list of when it's been unsuccessful because if an active shooter comes in that door and I'm armed, I can fight him from here. If I don't have a gun, I can throw stuff at him to distract him, but to stop him, I got to get touching distance. And that puts me at a great disadvantage. It can still work. It's just not as successful and more dangerous. I already told you how I grade a response plan, and it's how it ends up with the fewest victims. I'm sure your local SWAT team could handle an active shooter. I'm just not real comfortable with how long it would take to notify them and get them here. I'm sure John Wick could do it, but does he attend your church? Okay. And most average cops could do it, but if they're not close enough to hear or see the start of it, to me, they're irrelevant. Jack did it in 2.3 seconds. I don't care who stops the active shooter. I don't care if they're old or young, male or female, cop or non-cop, Democrat, Republican. I don't care who stops the active shooter. I care about how quickly it's done. I don't care how you stop them. I don't care if you shoot them, throw hot coffee in their face before you beat their brains out with a coffee pot, run over them with your truck, tackle them, hit them with a baseball bat in the throat. I don't care the method. I care how quickly the method is applied. So if the pastor can hit the guy over the back of the head with a chair and hold him down before a cop with a gun gets there, then let's do that. Because every few seconds we don't stop him, there's another person getting shot. I tell organizations like churches, whatever time, money, and effort you're already going to spend, we can't afford more. I'm not telling you to spend more. Whatever time, money, and effort you're already going to spend on an active shooter plan, 90% of that time, money, and effort is your plan and training and equipment to quickly counterattack like rabid wasp and stop this guy. Why so much? Why 90%? Because that's the only thing that gives us a chance at a low victim count. Why shouldn't we invest 90% in that? That only leaves 10%. What's there? Well, almost all of that is training and equipment to treat and evacuate The few, we let him shoot before we stop him. That only leaves 1%. What's in there? Everything we're doing now that won't help. See-through backpacks, panic buttons, apps on our phones, better locks, better cameras, higher fences. Won't help us in the least, but that's what the country's spending money on. Individual options. We got to get away from listen to the intercom or follow some pre-done plan, or the worst is everybody does the same thing. Lockdown drill. Absolutely worst. Gets us slaughtered in an attack. We change to everybody makes their own decision. I've been in the Army and I've been a school teacher. Both organizations hate independent thought and decision making. Okay, but that's what we have to do. Everybody has to make their own individual decisions. Based off what? Well, where are you in relation to the shooter? If the shooter starts out in your parking lot, the people in the parking lot versus the people in the lobby versus the people in here versus the people down where you eat a sandwich probably shouldn't do the same thing. That's nice and orderly, and it makes the plan easy to type, but that's not the best thing for each person. What are your abilities? Are you mentally and physically capable of doing deadly, horrible, ruthless violence against another human? What are your capabilities to run, slither, jump out of a window, a second floor window? What's available to you? What are weapons available to you to fight? What are evacuation routes that are available? You consider all those. You're going to have 3 options. They are all very bad. You choose the least bad, like the Argo video. There will not be a good option. You're going to choose the least bad option. We have to teach that the attack day is opposite day. Attack day is opposite day. Rules that apply on every other day do not apply on opposite day. Rules apply on opposite day that don't apply to any other day. So for instance, in a school, students, we don't want you to be violent on any other day. But on this day, not only would we begrudgingly allow violence, we're actually encouraging violence. And not just a little bit of violence, deadly, ruthless violence. On any other day, we don't want you breaking windows. But this is opposite day. Break anything. Break every window. Break anything that saves lives. We'll replace it, no problem. On any other day, we don't want you leaving class, the building, or the campus without permission. On this day, run like the wind. On this day, we don't care where you are as long as you're alive. Just go, we'll find you. So we tell everybody, you have 3 options. They will all be bad. War game them, think them through, resource them, practice them. All 3, so that on that day you look and go, they are all really bad, but right now, because of the conditions, this one's a little less bad for me, and you execute it. The first option everybody should consider, I didn't say everybody do, everyone's not capable of this, but everyone should consider, and what every organization should encourage everybody to consider is fight. Fight is the first option considered, because fight is best for humanity. It's not best for every individual, but it's best for humanity. If I hear shooting in the parking lot and I can see him coming up the front door, the best thing for me is probably find an exit and get as far away from him as I can. But the best thing for humanity is please somebody shoot him to death, because that means the lowest victim count. I had a guy at a school, I got to go home and tell my 5-year-old daughter in pre-K that she's got to fight the active shooter. No, that's the beauty of this. Everybody doesn't have to fight. We only need 1 or 2. We only need 1 or 2. And they don't go out in the middle of the desert to do these attacks. They come to a crowded public place where there's 50, 100, 250 people. Out of that crowd, there are 1 or 2 in here that'll fight him. Let them. Encourage him to. Don't stop them from doing it. And we will all benefit if the 1, 2, or 3 in here that will fight, that are capable of fight, we all benefit from that. So let them. We only needed Jack Wilson. We only needed Gina Som. So this is really easy. You have 2 choices, and they're 100% opposite. Will you go do deadly, ruthless, vicious violence against this evil attacker? Yes or no? Yes, then go. No, then get away. That's easy decision tree here. Will you go fight him? If the answer is no, then your decision's made. Run the other way. You have 2 choices. Go fight him or get away from him. Only 2 choices. Pretty easy. Now, there's a third option. We shouldn't start with this. I don't call it a choice. It's what you do when you don't have a choice. And that is the barricade, because you cannot flee. But even then, you have to have a fight plan in case he comes around it. But a lot of schools in America start with a lockdown drill. They start with barricade, because that's the easiest thing to type and the easiest thing to drill. But it gets people slaughtered when he shows up. The active shooter is going to arrive with his plan, and we know what his plan is. He's going to show up and try to shoot a whole bunch of people before the cops stop him. He's going to actively carry out that plan and that goal unless someone acts to stop it. He would like to shoot a lot of people. We would like him to shoot 0. That's quite a difference. That's like when you're at the yard sale and something's marked $20 and you say, I'll give you $2 for it. That's quite a difference, right? So now we got to have some negotiation between those two big differences. And you're hoping that the negotiation ends closer to the $2 you offered, not the $20 he has ticketed. Our negotiation with the active shooter starts with his first shot. And how quick and immediate and violent our counterattack is will determine whether it ends closer to the 50 he wants or closer to the 0 we want. Active shooters can only get a high victim count if we let them get a high victim count. The problem is we've been letting them pretty much for 40 years. We just got to stop letting them. My goal, single-digit victim count in all future attacks. How can we accomplish that? I only know of one way math says we can do that, and that is a counterattack within the first 30 seconds. How can we successfully counterattack in the first 30 seconds? You can do it with a gun or without a gun. Both have worked. Both can work. Who in here has been in the Army or the Marines? Army or Marines? All right, back me up if they say I'm lying. Can you cut grass with scissors? You absolutely can. All right, so you can cut grass with scissors. You can cut grass with the old rotary push my grandmother would not oil. You can cut grass with a power push, and you can cut grass with a 0 turn. If your job is to cut grass, there's a big variety of tools you can use with different efficiencies. I would choose the most efficient tool to cut the grass and to stop an active shooter if it was up to me. Here's what you got. Church-focused training. If we had a general study, it would not only cover churches, it'd cover schools, businesses, government offices, outdoor areas, all the places that have been attacked. School focus only talks schools, cops talk cop-specific stuff, but about half of that is gun stuff, so that would apply to armed citizens as well. This is just a sample of the live fire that we do. This is not the first thing we do. This is after we've done a lot of prep stuff, but this is the most realistic I can do live fire training specifically for the active shooter. What would I want an armed church member to do? Go towards the evidence, the sights and the sounds, find the one guy causing a problem. If you're not already, get within your skill level, and then put bullets into him and only him until he's not a problem anymore. So. That's interesting. That's Rodney. He's the head of his church security team. When he went in there and found him, he brought the gun up, and then he stepped to his left. Why did he move after he brought the gun up? He saw an innocent behind the guy he wanted to shoot, which is a Rule 4, safety Rule 4 problem we never train that we need to. Roto-Reggie. Just flat decided to freeze, didn't it? It just does not want to go into play mode, does it? And we're right here at the end. This is odd. right, well, I'm just have to, whoa. We're at the end, so this won't take. You already saw that. All right, so I'm busy. I'm quite busy. I'm doing 3 things here in Iowa. Then I do a COP conference in St. Louis, then a tactical conference in Dallas, and I'm busy. I'm very busy. I actually was going to do a conference in Trinidad and Tobago, and they canceled because they didn't have the money. All right, so I am hosting, y'all are probably too far away, but if you know anybody down closer to me that might want to go, August 23rd, I am hosting a Heroes Conference. And we talked about 3 of these gentlemen. Jack Wilson's the guy who shot the guy in the middle of his sanctuary that had shot the 2 people with a shotgun. Stephen Williford's the guy that his daughter woke up, got his rifle, ran down and shot the guy outside the church. Pastor David George is the guy that shot the guy at Walmart. Officer Greg Stevens, Garland, Texas Police Department, was 59 years old, had spent almost his entire police career as a motorcycle traffic cop. And he was at a huge event, had volunteered to work overtime for security. 2 guys drove from Phoenix, Arizona to Garland, Texas. That's over 1,000 miles. 2 guys drove over 1,000 miles to do this attack, pulled up in their car, got out with body armor and AK rifles and started shooting. And a 59-year-old fat motorcycle cop drew his pistol and shot and killed both of them. So he'll be the 4th one there. At a church, pastor after a church, but even he, all 4 of these gentlemen that I've heard speak many, many times, all 4 of them will say point blank, God was there with me and helped me do this. All 4 of them. If the active shooter shows up, we need to make a scene. I appreciate y'all for attending. No heckling, nobody threw fruit or anything like that. And I really this would not have happened. I do this all the time. This is nothing for me to do it. But I did it because John and his organization and this church said, hey, let's do this, and put a lot of work and effort into it so that it looks really easy. So I really appreciate the church. John, every time John's called, it's a great event. So I love doing it. And there's my information. I have cards and flyers, I think, still out there. So I will take questions now. I don't do the questions where 2 trains leave cities traveling different speeds. I don't do those, but just about anything else. But you're welcome to leave. I'll stay and talk as long as you want to talk individually. Yes, sir. Yeah, yeah. And I explained, that's the best. Every time I do this, I've asked the sheriff for convicts to come out, so we have real people you can shoot. And I'm not heartless. I'd let them wear a vest, right? But, the sheriff won't do it. So the best I can give them in that is the plastic. But they would be running. That's what I tell them. The people that don't have guns, they are running away from the guys. That's the best I can do. Yeah.
So, with our safety protocols that we've done, we want to do more of we actually had a guy from the police department come and do a walkthrough a few years ago, but we haven't revisited that to help us look at soft response within our facility. We've made some pretty significant changes. Even architecturally, we walled off a closet or open doorway to our nursery. And we made that, those are priority things for us, And one of the things that we do with our plan is if a active shooter situation started, that area is really kind of walled off from normal access the way that we have designed in our church building. But they are told to get out of the building, which also, there's always the potentiality of somebody outside that's a second shooter. We recognize that. But it's also the best of bad options. But to get them outside of the facility, we actually have a church building next door to us that their safety team, our safety team work in cooperation with each other, and we have that kind of thing. If something happened, our kids are going to be going over to your building first, right?
Yeah.
And just any thoughts on that?
So if we have enough people, and again, this is the active shooter threat, not all the other security problems that a church has. We have enough people that no matter where he chooses to start shooting, we'll have him stopped within 10 or 15 seconds. So that's before most people are going to get back up from crouching down. So then, after we stop him, then whether we have people go out in the parking lot or just tell them to go home, we'll have the cops call to you, or you go next door. That doesn't make a big difference to me. When I go to schools, a lot of schools every year do a big reunification plan. It's this huge exercise where they practice reunifying the kids with their parents after an attack. And I tell them, stop doing that. You don't think we ought to reunify the kids with their parents? I'm like, I think that's going to happen whether you try to do it or not. If you tried to stop it, you couldn't. All the kids want to find their parents. The parents want to find most of their kids, right? They all got phones. That's going to happen. Instead, let's take all that time, money, and effort on our counterattack plans so we have to reunify fewer parents with their kids at the morgue. Let's work on that end. So I go these school conferences, a lot of them, every summer, and the vendors where they make all their money they're selling stuff to the schools. If you buy our product, our locks, our film on the door, our security cameras, our fences, our apps, your kids will be safe. And they're thinking of building things, and that's really not going to help in most situations, in my opinion. It'll stop the active shooter, and then everything else will be easy if we stop him quickly. Yeah.
What success have you had in getting schools to think about that reunification? Because I'm a school teacher, so we did a lot of this stuff with law enforcement and volunteers, and it was a mess.
It's going to be.
You're right.
But
Let them go. But
if you stop the active shooter in the first 30 seconds, everything wouldn't be as messy. But if it goes on for 5, 6, 8 minutes, and then the cops eventually stop it or they commit suicide 6 minutes in, then it's going to be a madhouse because everyone's going to be scattered to the winds. Yeah, they just like doing that because it makes them feel good, reunifying the kids, so they work on that. Everyone's got it. They're going to find each other. That's not a problem. But schools don't want to talk about doing violence, so they talk about reunification because that makes their hearts feel good. Yeah.
We go to a pretty decent sized church, large campus, maybe 1,000 people on campus on Sunday. They're debating whether they're starting some sort of security team. Do you have wisdom on whether you think an armed presence should be concealed versus something displayed?
That's gonna be a flavor of the church on what they want to show. If you're going to have armed security members, whether it's a formal team, if you're going to have armed people, should it be concealed or unconcealed? I wouldn't have a problem either way. Being exposed has some deterrence, but it might turn people off and not want to come to the church. That might not be the image that the church leadership wants to do. Concealed, they don't know who's got it. I wouldn't have a problem if there was a mixture. We're going to have 1 or 2 people out front that clearly says, we are a wasp nest that you don't want to thump. But then we have more concealed people. I wouldn't have a problem either way.
From a sheer deterrence standpoint, have you seen the data one or the other?
No. I can show you examples where the fact that they thought or knew there were armed people there caused them to go somewhere else, but not every time. Most people don't know that Pulse nightclub shooter, what was put out and what most people still believe is he was a radical Muslims, they hate gays, he went to a gay nightclub. That fits perfectly, but he didn't go there to shoot gay people. He went there because that was the second club when he Googled nightclubs in Orlando that gave him. He had already given up on Disney World because of their security. He went to the first club Google gave him. They had an armed cop in a marked police car, so then he went to Pulse was the second audible he called at the line of scrimmage. It had nothing to do with the fact that it was a gay club. Yeah. It works differently, but I have small victories. I was doing a presentation a couple years ago in Pennsylvania, and actually a fire chief, and I think he brought a captain with him, came down from New York. And he said he'd never known about the time thing. He goes, based off that, when the first 911 call comes in, he's going to back up 2 minutes and assume the call came in 2 minutes after the first shot, and he's going to start dispatching ambulances based off the expected shoot rate. Sometimes they take input from the cops for the ambulances. Sometimes the first ambulance that shows up, their job is not to treat. Their job is to manage and tell them, okay, it looks like we're going to need 7, we're going to need 8, etc. And then what the EMTs will do, it's getting better, we're improving, but y'all remember Aurora, Colorado, orange-haired Batman movie theater guy, shot 70 people in that theater. 47 people were evacuated to the hospital, 47 of the victims. The first 27 were in police cars because the fire chief wouldn't release the ambulances to go into that movie complex until the cops said every single nook and cranny was cleared. So, yeah.
So, school teachers have continuing ed and teachers' days and all these things. In the school teacher world, when these teachers go off to these training seminars, who's the expert guy that come in to do the seminar on this stuff, and what is he telling them?
It's usually one of 4 major companies that I don't want to say their names here, but I'll talk to you individually. And they make big money and they're real successful because they will come into the schools and say, what you're doing is exactly right. Now let me show you a little different technique to tie the door, but what you're doing is exactly right. Hunker down, turn out the lights, pull down the shade, pack all your kids in the corner of the room. You'll be safe in that classroom until the cops come and shoot the guy. But I'll go in there and show them the animation of the Parkland shooting that shows that he shot 18 of his kids on the first floor by shooting through the classroom doors. He never went in the classroom. I was a brand new teacher, retired colonel, brand new teacher. I was told, stay in your classrooms, lock the doors, and you'll be safe. Well, not if your doors and walls aren't bulletproof. You're not. But they want people to tell them that what you're doing is exactly right because schools want a nonviolent solution to a violent problem. So I have a classroom facility on my training facility. The 2 toilets are serviced by a septic tank. So the wastewater goes into a septic tank. When that septic tank gets full, I'm uncomfortable touching the poopies. So I call a guy in a pump truck. I outsource that problem because I don't want to deal with it. But no one's getting shot every 3 seconds. I'm waiting on the pump truck, so that's okay. So the schools they don't want violence. They don't want to talk about it. They don't want to think about it. They darn sure don't want to plan for it. So they outsource it to the people with the badge, even though we know it's going to take them too long to get there. So if they get either experts in the field or cops that tell them, that's right, you hunker down and survive and let the professionals, okay. That's what they want to hear. And that works perfectly until the shooter shows up, yeah.
So it's probably an impossible question for you to answer, but one of those bad guys that work in law enforcement have been to those academic classes and considered an expert in that.
You're not a state trooper, are you?
No.
Okay, good. All right.
My question is, I mean, the legislature in this state has went, I think, a good way. We have the ability to arm teachers now.
Do they, John?
We have the ability, but the insurance companies are preventing us from having.
Yeah.
Nobody wanted to do it. So how do we change that mindset?
No, the schools want to do it, but the insurance company is blocking them.
Some schools do, but you're going to find a lot.
Oh,
I have a list of schools
Yeah.
that want training if the MC will finally play ball.
yeah. And it'll probably be more of the rural schools than the city schools. Yeah.
I guess that's my question.
It might be 10 or 15%.
That. I mean, I can sit here and tell you that you're exactly right. The only way to stop a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. But
Well, and not to nitpick, but that's not the only way to stop them. You can stop them unarmed. It's just by far the most successful. So all I can do is show them the math. If after seeing the math, they go, by God, we're not going to have guns, then I'm not the leader of the church. I'm not the leader of the school. A good friend of mine, John Benner, was giving a presentation. This is probably 15 years ago, school outside of Cincinnati. And he said, you know, if you get cornered, then you use a wrench, whatever, and you fight this guy. You beat his brains in. Superintendent stood up. That's it. Everyone leave. This presentation's over. We will never advocate violence in this school. But that's not true, because on the day of the attack, they will be screaming into the phone, please, God, get somebody here to do some violence. They just want the violence 4 to 8 minutes away instead of in the first 15 seconds. So, yeah. So some people are just ideologically set. I can't help. All I can do is show them the math and then let the leaders do what the leaders do. But at least they know.